Hey everyone, welcome into the Guilty as Charged podcast. About 20 minutes ago, I didn't know I was doing this, and neither did the other gentleman here with me. But surprise, surprise, more drops every single day, and it seems like JC Latham is very much so in play, if not now the favorite to be selected at 5 overall, 5th overall. Bit of a stunner. We'll talk about it. We'll even do a mock draft with Latham in there. Before we jump in, though, let's start with Alex Insdorf. How are you doing?
I was doing better a couple hours ago, to be honest with you, but doing okay. Happy the draft's tomorrow. We will have some fun, I'm sure, on the live stream and stuff. But can't believe we're already at the end of this, and this would be certainly the rug getting pulled out from under us if this ends up being true. Latham going from a plus 260 favorite on DraftKings to plus 275 as of checking 10 minutes ago.
Yes, quite a surprise. I see the comments in the comment section. We're not panicking. We're not wasting a live stream. We're just going to talk about this and talk through it as we have several scenarios. Alex Katzen has certainly been talking through several scenarios. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Coming here live from Detroit. Excited to cover everything in person tomorrow and through the rest of the week. But yeah, just chilling in the hotel. Was writing up my, some stuff to prep for tomorrow and everything. And then all of a sudden there's a barrage of tweets and I'm like, man, I got to change a whole bunch of the stuff that I was planning to do for tomorrow. So, so it's good. I think we're going to have plenty of time tomorrow to work through it as well. But that's the beauty of the draft is this next 24 hours or so here, we will all be panicked and freaking out and doing all sorts of stuff. And that's why we're here is to kind of try to prevent that as much as we can. Try to hold off the pitchforks and the angry mob as much as we can until they actually make a pick, and then we will distribute them as necessary.
Yes, sounds good. We'll be first in line, that's for sure. You're in Detroit, so you are right there on the battlefront for us. Let's get into it right now. Where are we coming from? Why are we even doing this? JC Latham, the stunner at 5, at 5th overall. Why are we talking about this? Well, we looked at any recent mocks. You have Benjamin Allbright selecting not Latham at 11th overall, not 5th overall. Then you have Connor Rogers and Trevor Sikkema separately mocking Latham to 5th overall. Danny Kelly 5th overall. Benjamin Solak 9th overall in a trade back. Hayden Winks 5th overall. Pete Schrager, technically it's TBD. He hasn't actually dropped his mock, but it sounds like he's going to go with Latham at 5. And then Josh Norris at 5th overall. I didn't even put it on here, but it's in the thumbnail. Daniel Jeremiah has the Chargers going with JC Latham at 5th overall. So it's not like it's one person and we're running with this whole thing because one person said it. I don't even know if we'd be doing this if it was Daniel Jeremiah and Pete Schrager alone. But there's enough people saying, hey, it's JC Latham. So let's jump into it. I'll go back to Katzen here on this one. What happened that puts Latham now in front in the analysts' eyes over Joe Alt?
I think there are a couple of things that could have happened. One of the things, and the thing that I kind of keep coming back to, is that most of those mocks don't include trades for the sake of simplicity, right? And so if you are going to try to project trades, right, you kind of have to overdraft or underdraft certain players in order to kind of like project a trade without projecting a trade. And so like in Daniel Jeremiah's mock, for example, he has JJ McCarthy falling all the way to the Vikings' natural pick at 11, and the Chargers taking Latham at 5. And I think that it's something where it's a lot more of like maybe, a lot of these people have heard that like Latham is a player that the Chargers are high on. Latham is a player that the Chargers would be interested in. We know that they've done a ton of homework on him. They sent Devlin to the pro day to work him out. They have, done all the visits. They've done all the everything else. And so I think that it's something where it's like, well, we can't exactly say that like we're going to put this trade in and have the Chargers pick Latham at 11. But if we could, that's what we would do. And I think that that's where a lot of that is coming from. Earlier in the day before the Jeremiah mock dropped, and it was still just kind of like these other people talking about how Latham was going to be a possibility at 5, and the odds were starting to change a little bit. That was something that I mentioned to like the people in the Discord and everything. Is that a lot of times like when those odds change, especially for teams that are so heavily rumored to trade down as the Chargers have been all of these months, a lot of times that just like is an indicator of interest in the player that they're going to take once they make that trade.
Mhm.
And so I think there's a distinct possibility that it's just that like the Chargers maybe have not necessarily a handshake agreement in place, but have a kind of like, hey, if this guy is on the board, if things break a certain way, if this all happen, then like we'll make this trade and move down to 10 or 11 or whatever it is. And then we'll take Latham there.
Yeah.
The only thing that's possible is that JC Latham is just going to go very high because he's a massive player and he plays for Alabama. And typically those guys don't last on the draft board very long. Regardless kind of like whether or not they are necessarily deserving of that spot over other players. I mean, like if you go back, it's not an Alabama player, but like the example that comes to mind, right, is like Mekhi Becton went over Tristan Wirfs that year.
Mm.
You know, because he's 6'8" and 400 pounds and gigantic, and Tristan Wirfs is just kind of like good at everything. And so there's certainly some element of that could be coming into play too, where it's just like, hey, this is the biggest guy. And even like Jeremiah in his kind of explainer that he did before the mock draft special, he did like a pre-draft show with Ryan Russillo and Todd McShay, where he just kind of said like, hey, like if you're talking about the Chargers taking like the biggest guy, the biggest bully, like, you know, for like what Harbaugh wants to establish culture wise and offense wise and all of these other things, then like the more you think about it, the more that JC Latham starts to kind of make sense. And I think that there probably has been, generally speaking, a disconnect between the way that the media feels about him and the way that the NFL feels about him.
Mhm.
And so that sort of convergence happening all right now, 24 hours before the draft, when everyone's in Detroit and everyone is hitting up their sources and it's like, hey, like, what can I put out there? Right. Is like, okay, well, now it's JC Latham time. Like, you know, it's all converging. And the final thing, not to go on a whole monologue about this, but the final thing about it is that JC Latham's agent is Drew Rosenhaus. And Drew Rosenhaus is the most public agent in the sport. And he is the most prone to leaking information about his clients that makes them look great. And so there's probably an element of it because a lot of these insiders get their information from agents and get their information from people that are connected to agents. Where it's like, hey, we're trying to like push this guy up the board because it's a crowded tackle class. And like if he doesn't go at 5 or he doesn't go at, you know, or if the Chargers do trade down and someone like the Titans at 7 are afraid that the Chargers are going to take him at 11 or something like that. Like that's the difference of millions of dollars for both Latham and for Rosenhaus, who gets a cut of that signing bonus. And so there's certainly an element of that could be in play as well. So all of that to say, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to take JC Latham at 5, but it's certainly a lot more possible than it was 2 hours ago.
Yeah, I would agree. Alex Insdorf, your thoughts here, and well said, Katzen.
Yeah, that was interesting. I actually didn't think about the Drew Rosenhaus thing, although I do remember Drew Rosenhaus was also Jalen Carter's agent last year, and we heard a lot of noise 24 hours about where was he going to go, where was he going to wind up, you know, and teams trading up, you know, trading back, figuring out what they were going to do for him. So I kind of think about this to some extent in the same vein. I don't think it's that surprising from a position standpoint in general. I mean, we have been pretty on they're going to take an offensive lineman train, regardless of what we want them to do. So I think that isn't surprising. And I think if you were to think about it through the prism of, you know, Joe Alt, who we've talked about switching positions and doing that versus Latham being the more natural fit at right tackle, I don't think any of that is particularly surprising. And I think the Chargers, kind of like Katzen said, have been pretty open about their process, right? And which pro days they've gone to and which coaches they've sent there. Like this hasn't been like a secret that they're taking an offensive lineman. I think as we get closer, it is a little more surprising that it is actually going, you know, potentially to be Latham. But they've kind of telegraphed the whole thing to some extent. So that part of it, I guess, isn't that surprising. Now, there are probably permutations, like Katzen said, in terms of trade backs, and some of the mocks have projected trade backs, some of them haven't. I'm sure a lot of this has to do probably with Arizona as well, who, you know, could still feasibly trade back if they get the right package. But as we've seen over the last week, it's become more and more likely that they will take Marvin Harrison Jr. And I'm sure that the odds kind of shifting for the Chargers in this dramatic of a way also probably locks that into a bit of a reality as well. So not what I would do with the 5th pick, but I get why, if this happens, this would end up being the pick.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing Daniel Jeremiah pointed out is that Ozzie Newsome is from Alabama, went to Alabama. His understudy, of course, Joe Ortiz, went to Auburn. Like that's kind of the realm they operate in. So it would not surprise me there, of course. So where do you guys ultimately end up? Before we jump into the mock draft simulator and just run through this mock with Latham at 5, the most likely scenario you think is what?
Latham at 5 or Alt at 5. Like, I think the trade back scenarios are possible. I think they are kind of like starting to dry up a little bit, but they could always still trade back if they get the right package. But it has been leaning tackle for a while. And so as much as I would like a Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. or even Ono Dunze, I do think they ultimately take tackle at 5. Or they can trade back with the Jets. They can trade back with the Bears, maybe the Vikings, who could still come up for J.J. McCarthy. But if the Cardinals take Marvin Harrison Jr., I do believe the Chargers are prepared to go for tackle.
Yeah, pretty much on the same page there. I think that the most likely outcome is probably either Alt or Latham at 5 or Latham at 11 or 10 or 9 or 12 or whatever it ends up being. But somewhere kind of in whatever that trade down range ends up being, for kind of all the reasons that I talked about just now. But if it is at 5, I would expect it to be between Alt and Latham. I wouldn't really expect the wide receivers to be in contention.
Yeah, no, at this point, the dream might be dead. We'll see. People are pointing out smokescreen, all that sort of stuff. Very possible, but everyone you talk to or everyone that you've seen, listened to, read, seems like it's going this way. I know you guys do a lot of groundwork and have talked to certain people on and off camera, and yeah,
it's getting later and later and later in the process for all of it to be a smokescreen. Is all I'll say.
The whole thing's on fire if it's
it's also kind of like Katz was saying earlier. I think Tyler, you said this, but it's like it would be one thing if it was just Jeremiah's mock. It would be one thing, but it's everybody saying this now. And it was everybody saying, to some extent, an iteration of the alt tackle stuff a couple of weeks ago. So I think one way or another, this was the direction we were headed. I just didn't specifically expect Latham. But I do think tackle has been the way this has been leading for a bit.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know, Insdorf, if you have guys ranked, or Katzen, how you guys have guys ranked. Is Latham, where is he range-wise for you? Because to me, I do have him as a top 10 player. So, it's not the worst thing in the world for me if they take him at 5. I get it. But where do you guys have him?
Yeah, I think that he would be around, I guess, tackle 3 or 4 for me. Probably Alt and then Fashanu, and then you get into a tier that's all kind of really bunched up, between him and if you count Troy Fautanu as a tackle, if you count Fuaga as a tackle, that sort of stuff. I think he's somewhere right in that range. People have asked me about it as kind of the resident draft guy of this channel, I guess, at this point. How would you feel about them taking it at 5? And it's honestly, probably better than them taking Alt at 5, in a weird sort of roundabout way, even though Alt is theoretically a better player, because you don't have to deal with flipping a guy to right tackle and having him learn a new position for the first time. If the identity truly is just going to be we're going to run the absolute crap out of the ball and just deflate teams for 60 minutes, then Latham is a much more natural fit for doing that sort of thing than Alt is, I think, as a right tackle. And so it's not something that I would be absolutely 100% against. I wouldn't despise it if they did it. I think it's just the fact that it has kind of come out of nowhere in the last 2 or 3 hours, and no one was talking about it as a possibility before this, where everyone is kind of why would they do this? The world is ending.
Right.
I think it's kind of like Katzen said. I have not ranked tackles this year. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I have watched 4 or 5 of them, including I watched the Latham game against Michigan. That was the one I watched the full entirety of. outside of the Jalen Milroe play. He was like pretty good in that game. But no, I mean, I think it's kind of like Hansen said. It makes sense specifically kind of for what the Chargers are thinking about doing in terms of establishing the run, in terms of having a natural fit at right tackle as opposed to Joe Alt, who has questions about switching over there. And then, like he mentioned with Fautanu and Fuaga, there are questions about whether their long-term NFL future is ultimately at tackle versus that question doesn't exist with Latham. So I think if you look at it and break it down from that standpoint, it's not that hard to understand. Now, if I have Latham ranked as a between 8 to 12 player, 8 to 15 player in this class, and I have Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors or Odunze ostensibly higher, or Joe Alt even higher than Latham, that is what makes it to some extent a questionable pick. But I think it is kind of like Katzen said, I think when we were messaging back and forth in the Discord, it's like he thinks Joe Alt is the ostensibly better player, but that, he understands why Latham would be the better fit from that standpoint. So, it's disappointing, I guess, from a player on the board standpoint, and like, who are your guys ranked from whatever 1 to 20. But I get why they would do it, and I get why Harbaugh and Roman think this will work.
Yeah, and I think that offensive line, like whoever they select, they're probably going to work out. Like I have the most certainty in an offensive lineman working out over a wide receiver. Like that's just how I feel about it. The difference, of course, is do you think that's the best thing for the offense? Is that the right, player? Was there a better player, etc.? The reason I asked you guys that is because I did a mock, and we'll jump into the mock right now. I did a mock real quick with Latham at 5, and I got an F for the selection because of how far down he is on the board. So we'll run through one right now. I want to just talk through it. I don't want to spend 45 minutes on this as Steven and I do far too often. So I'll go ahead and hit start on this one, and I will take. So let's see. PFF has him.
Calling by a lot of names here.
Yeah, so he's at 18 for them. For the sake of just running through this exercise, let's go with him at 5. We could trade back, and that's a whole other thing. But let's just run through it at 5. Let's say either way, they stick and pick a tackle at 5. So let's say it's Latham. They get the right tackle of the future. The next question then, so, you guys have run through enough mock drafts. I don't need to tell you who's in what range, but I guess the next question before we jump into this pick is how long do they wait for their next wide receiver, do you think? We'll start with Katzen here.
I think it's probably this pick because Ladd McConkey is here. But
fair enough. Yeah.
I think that it probably has to be 37. And, it does get into kind of a difficult territory because we've talked about all of us have talked about for months, right? Of well, it seems like they're going to take a D tackle in the first 2 days. And then what about the whole Blake Corum thing? And what about the whole taking a tackle in the first round thing? And how is this all going to work if they don't trade down from this 5th overall pick? And obviously, yes, the depth chart at wide receiver suggests that they should be taking a wide receiver at 5. That ship has sailed. We're done. It's gone. It's already done. And so yes, ideally you address it at 37, and you trust that Johnson takes a step forward as a guy that was a first round pick a year ago, right? And you trust that Josh Palmer can be a serviceable starter for you. You trust that Darius Davis can have a little bit more of a role in the offense as a slot receiver. I still think, especially with this extra 4th round pick, that you probably double up at wide receiver. And that's kind of how I've been operating under the assumption that they're not going to take one at 5. Because again, I cannot stress this enough because I see people still talking about it. They're not going to do that. We've moved past that, I think. Whether it's at 5 or whether they trade down, it's gone. And so I do think that you address it here at 37, as long as someone that you like hits the board. And I think that someone that you like can be anyone between those 4 names that are on the screen right now: McConkey, Keon Coleman, Roman Wilson, who has the Harbaugh familiarity, Ricky Pearsall. And then you take another one in the 4th round or the 5th round, right? With that extra pick that you got from trading Keenan Allen to Chicago, you take another one, or you take another one in the 5th round, depending on how the board shakes out, and you do everything. But it gets tough. Like, it definitely does get tough because you run out of selections to take all of the players that we think that they're going to take. But ultimately, like, yeah, I think you have to address it at 37 if you're going to do this.
Yeah, I would agree.
I was just going to say, I think you have to address it probably at 37. If not, definitely at 69. But yeah, you start getting into some possibilities here. And also, it is worth noting, and I've written these up for Chargers Wire, they had preliminary interest in Tyler Boyd. They brought Chark in last week. And then MBS they had interest in. So, I mean,
they will make a signing after the draft ends.
So I do believe that is coming at some point. So I think it comes down to kind of what Popper was saying in your guys' show, which is, are they going to take two or are they going to take one? And in a situation where you don't trade back now, and a situation where you don't know if you're taking two, I think you certainly have to take one of them here.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that they'll definitely sign one after the draft. Are we good with McConkey here? Or do you think they go Wilson?
Let's throw everyone a bone and take McConkey. Let's throw everyone a bone. Let's be nice.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Or can we take the Michigan Panther pick now so then we don't take Corum at 69?
I refuse. I'm in control of this mock. There's no shot Corum's going at 69. I don't care what else.
I'm just thinking in real life, but
I don't care if he walks up and quotes Lord of the Rings. I'm not taking him at 69 or anything. So
me neither.
McConkey at 37. Let's go with that one. Goodness gracious. By the way, people, please go watch Ladd McConkey. Him being at 37 would be a dream. I know he's a white receiver, but move past that, guys. All righty. So we've got our offensive tackle. We've got a wide receiver.
Let's go.
So we did it. Maybe not in the order everyone wanted.
We fixed the team.
We fixed the team, guys. We're ready to go. This is everything that they wanted.
Andrew Phillips.
So I don't know. Like some positions going to get screwed if they don't trade down. Some positions definitely getting screwed if they take a tackle. Yeah. Like if you stick and pick and take a tackle, you're a weaker overall team, in my opinion.
Right.
So with this team, hey, there's a Michigan Panther pick. Alex's, you tell me, what are we doing here? Start with Insdorf here.
I mean, I think if we're just going off of this mock, then they would take Colson, but I also don't think Colson's going to be there. I think it was Pelissero, or I don't remember if it was Pelissero or Fowler, who wrote sneaky guys that could fall into the first round. So there's some momentum that he could be there as one of those first round guys. Edgerrin Cooper kind of falls into that conversation too. I ultimately don't think he's going to be there. So I think this really comes down to CB or DT. And if I'm thinking in that vein, I'm thinking kind of between Kyrie Jackson and then, we have your Ruker Horoho and, your Michael Hall Jr. Dorless, who I don't know is 100% kind of a scheme fit like Steven has mentioned before, but he's on the board. I think it's probably a CB or DT at this point.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think obviously like I was talking about even before we made the McConkey pick, like this is the kind of problem that you run into is that they need to take a corner because they need someone to start this season. But also we think that they're going to take a D tackle in the first 2 days, and they kind of need a D tackle in the first 2 days because none of the D tackles on the roster can rush the passer at all. And so maybe that's a situational guy that you can get a little bit later. Maybe it's not. Maybe you can get a starting corner a little bit later if you happen to just hit on a gem like every other team seems to be able to do, but maybe you don't. And there's still tight end, there's still linebacker, there's still guard, there's still everything else. There's still center. Yeah, I agree with Insdorf. I think at this point you kind of have to be between corner and D tackle. I don't think that Phillips, despite being the top guy on the board here, makes a ton of sense for the Chargers just because he's going to be more of a slot only sort of guy. And so that's not necessarily really what they're looking for. Personally, if it was me, I'd be between kind of Renardo Green or Michael Hall. But I understand the compulsion with Kyrie Jackson. Obviously super toolsy, has everything that you want, just happens to already be 25. And And then, like, I think D tackle, you can make a pretty compelling argument for either or Michael Hall. I think either one makes a lot of sense for them.
Yeah, I get you there. In the draft, give me a final decision here, so I don't have to. Everyone that Katzen mentioned and you mentioned, I'm cool with, and it really doesn't matter at this point. So
I'll
go with position.
I'll go with the Horoho.
Okay.
Also,
Great.
just because I think there might be some like corner, potential like in free agency after the draft of like some guys they could go for. Steven Nelson is still out there. Stephon Gilmore, I think, is still out there. So I mean, there is something left on the market. So
we should have just waited. Michael Hall is still here in the 4th.
Yeah, he's
fucked up.
You're fine. You don't pray that he's there in the 4th round, and I can't imagine he even gets there unless there's more than
I don't think he gets there.
No, I don't think so.
Sorry, we did the D tackle thing. So you talked about wide receiver at this point. Obviously, there's several options here, or corner. Like I think it's either double dip at wide receiver or corner, and then maybe the other thing happening, unless of course Harbaugh wants to completely commit to everything and go running back or trenches. Let's do corner.
Yeah,
they literally don't have one.
I think we have to do it.
And a 4th rounder is a starter now. I have not watched Kalen Carson, but you're getting to a lot of slot corner and Jones. Brownlee's going to be a slot. I think Shaw Smith-Wade's kind of short, respectfully. James and Hart, Richardson, those are some taller 6-ish foot guys. Katzen, do you have a favorite here? Or we can look at another position.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Carson is a good one. I think like Cam Hart is a good one. We've talked about him a ton.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I like a lot of those guys like in this range here. Norzad is here if we want to just commit fully to trenches and take a center to start. But yeah, I think like probably Carson or I'm spacing on the other one's name. But yeah, Carson or Hart. Or Richardson. I think any of those are fine, and I think that Hart and Richardson are a little bit underrated by the simulator. But for the sake of salvaging the PFF simulator grades and being an F for the Latham pick, maybe we should take Carson.
Okay, I'm cool with Carson. Alex or Insdorf, excuse me.
I'm cool with it. I prefer Hart, but I just took Horoho, so yeah, we can go Carson here.
Cool. It's something different, and yeah, playing the simulator. That's totally fine. Hey, you can take Hart right now if you wanted to. Is this double dip at wide receiver territory? Is this interior offensive line?
What do we have for running backs?
Holy cow, even Norzad's gone. Great. Oh, Norzad went right before this pick. That's awesome. Sweet. Running backs. All right, this is the real stuff. Tyrone Tracy, who's very high for a player who's barely played. Blake Watson, Isaiah Davis, Braylon Allen, Audric Estime, etc. I mean, I'm fine with any of those guys. It just depends on your flavor.
I think if there's this many guys still on the board at running back, I feel like you can probably wait one more round.
Okay.
I think in real life, like Braylon Allen would be a contender here, but I think for me, I would wait.
All right. You want to double dip at wide receiver, and I don't know, pretend we can make this work.
Yeah, I like Thrash. Cowling and Taj Washington are probably pretty redundant here.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. I have a personal vendetta against Brendan Rice.
Okay.
I just don't think he's very good is the problem.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he's good either, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know thinking the player is not good as a personal vendetta. Otherwise, I have a lot of
some people take it that way. It depends. But yeah, I think if you're going to take a receiver here, it'd probably be Thrash. And he would just be kind of like basically him and McConkey would be like alternates at Z. And then like you'd get McConkey in the slot when Thrash came in to play Z. And so like he's a downfield guy and he'll stretch the field a little bit, even though he didn't run super, super fast. So maybe that's appealing to people. Hopefully.
Wow, you really sold me on that one. No, I totally get Thrash though there. I totally get the redundancy aspect you're looking at for some of these other guys. Just a quick look at the rest of the board. unless you want to go tight end. I don't know. That's a tricky position.
Yeah, and I think Wiley is probably gone by here in real life.
Yeah.
So like only makes it tougher.
Yeah. I'm okay with Thrash. Let's just do it for the sake of
I'm fine with
appeasing the receiver gods. And McConkey, Thrash, Palmer, Johnston, Davis, wide receiver room.
McConkey and Thrash, the new Keenan and Mike, baby.
Yep, we did it. We fixed it.
Yeah, it's like Ratchet and Clank, like McConkey and Thrash. Like we're just gonna.
Sounds like a hair metal band.
Yeah, it sounds great. Whatever works. Okay, I didn't realize Cole Bishop was hated. Now, all the way at 132, but here we are.
PFF is major Cole Bishop haters. I don't understand.
So we could go Steven. We can go Steven Panderpick here.
We could go Steven Panderpick. What do we have at running back now that we've waited around?
Yeah, we should probably look at that. So Will Ship. Oh goodness gracious, they all went.
Kamani Vidal.
Vidal.
Okay, are we going Kamani Vidal? That's totally fine with me.
People are gonna hate us if we go Vidal over Grendo.
That's fine. I like Vidal a lot, man. Like he's got the best of Elijah Dotson with like 30 more pounds.
Yeah.
I love Vidal. I don't know if he like the simulator will probably not be happy with us for taking this, but
I think in real life they would probably take Garendo, but I would take Vidal.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good mix with what they have. Yeah, let's do it. What the heck? Who cares? Come on, Vidal. Had a blast watching him. Oh, this is gonna be such a good grade, guys.
Oh yeah, we're doing great.
Yeah, we have like 6 degrees between us or whatever, and we're gonna get like a C minus, but whatever. Okay.
Now
we're feeling linebacker, guys.
Well, there's a lot that are on the board. Wallace will be gone.
Is Jordan McGee still here or no?
I think he must be gone.
Yeah, I think he went.
Yeah.
We can go with Katz and Panderpick for Olafoshio here if we want to.
True. Best coverage linebacker in the draft, Eddie Olafoshio.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. I can't tell if that was sarcasm.
No, I mean he legitimately is a very good coverage linebacker. I just don't know how satisfied you're going to be with him on run defense.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, I would think he would probably start in like a special teams capacity like this year, right? If we're talking about
for sure, and especially like if you're talking about like down here at 181, like it's going to be more of a special teamer for sure.
Yeah, and Ficken will gas up that pick. So we're going linebacker just because.
Wait, what else is left on the rest of the board? You didn't even filter it. This is just the board.
Yeah, this
just happens to be linebackers.
Punter.
Tory Taylor, J.K. Scott competition.
Yeah, Garendo is still here. We could take another running back.
I can't do it. I do like Garendo though. I don't think he should go that late.
Michigan Pander picks.
Those are definitely there.
Oh, we could take Tip Ryman. That's actually a good pick. More tight ends. AJ Barner is here. I think tight end probably makes sense.
Did we take a tight end or no?
No, we haven't taken it yet.
We also don't have any interior offensive linemen. We could take Daniel Jeremiah's tight end too, Tanner McLaughlin out of nowhere.
True.
Really? That's his tight end too?
He just said it was his tight end too, man.
Oh.
Which I mean I like McLaughlin.
I don't hate it. I was just surprised to hear that.
Yeah. No, he's high on him, but I like kind of understand why, but also like there's a lot of reasons that I think he's sort of glossing over as to like why he's not that high.
Right. Age for starters. So sure, let's go tight end. I have not watched Ryman, so I mean Barner's the Pander pick, but
yeah. So I mean Barner's the Pander pick. Ryman is the like 6th offensive lineman sort of pick of just like the best blocking tight end, and like has more receiving upside than he's being given credit for, but is kind of more of a Will Dissly style player, I guess, as like primarily a blocker, will give you a little bit of receiving juice. Barner sort of the same thing, but is a bit more of a Pander pick, so maybe Barner makes more sense here.
And then interior offensive lineman. I watched Robinson, and then that's dried up. We have no center of the future either, by the way. Again, something falls to the wayside. You pick offensive tackle at 5.
Yeah. Trey Pipkins is playing center now.
Cool, dude. I saw Steven's pass set, so we're pretty good there. Okay, let's go tight end because we're out of interior offensive lineman. Let's go Ryman just because it's a little bit different.
Sure.
Have we drafted a Michigan player yet?
No,
I don't think so.
We could go Barner if we want to do.
All
Michigan.
right, let's do Barner.
Yeah,
All right.
let's.
Yeah, let's just do Barner and move on with our lives. All right, 2 more picks. All righty. Oh, Elijah Jones 225 still. Okay, that's something.
Crazy.
How many corners do we have?
Just the one, I think.
We took Carson.
We took
right?
Carson.
Yeah. Okay, wouldn't mind Jones for a body at that point. Jalen
Jalen Sundell is a center, even though he's listed as a tackle on here.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
We can go.
Well, he played. So he's listed as a tackle because he played left tackle at North Dakota State, but he didn't get drafted as a center.
Interesting.
We can go full 49ers Harbaugh pander here and take Frank.
Not the junior we wanted.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I trust your judgment, Katzen, on Sundell if he's a center. We're out of people.
I mean, he's going to play center in the league. I don't know how much of a fit he'll be with the Chargers, but like if you want to take a center for the sake of taking a center before the draft ends, then
Right.
He would probably be the one to take because all the actual natural centers, according to PFF, will be gone.
Okay, we did that. Insdorf, I will give you the floor here to throw a dart at a running back if you'd like.
Oh yeah. Okay.
You have 4 to pick from. Here's the 4.
Between these 4, I'd go with Meon Williams.
Sure. Let's do it. I think
I was hoping Jace would still be here, but
yeah. Yeah, I've not watched Meon Williams. Okay, guys. So our draft. So JC Latham gets an F, but our next 2 picks get an A. This looks like my math and then history and English grades. That's not bad.
Averages out too. C's get degrees.
C's get degrees, baby. That's what I'm talking about. So we started with
got
JC
2 D's for Vidal.
We'll get there. We'll get there. So we started with JC Latham at 5 because we're going with the new discussion. Lad McConkey at 37, defensive interior offensive lineman Rook or Rororo at 69. Then corner Kalen Carson at 105, Jamari Thrash, the wide receiver, at 110, Kamani Vidal at 140, AJ Barner at 181, Jalen Sundell, who's going to be a center, at 225, and then Meon Williams at 253. So we got a B. Despite starting off really poorly, we ended up with a B, guys. Not bad.
See, everything is fine.
Everything's fine. Everything's
I think
totally
everyone
fine.
loves our mock draft.
Nobody smart goes to Michigan, right? So it's totally fine. We don't need to get any good scores there. So that's that. If that felt as awful as it looked while you were watching or listening to this, it didn't feel great. But in Harbaugh we trust, boys. Right. So we are really thinking there's no receiver tomorrow at 5 or 11 or 23 or whatever, and maybe 23,
maybe 23.
Yeah,
and we're going for offensive tackle.
Yeah, if it's at 23, it would have to be Brian Thomas falling because of medicals, I think.
Is there because of that?
There was a report today from Breer that he got flagged for, I think it was a shoulder thing. And I think DJ said during his mock that multiple teams have flagged him for something. I don't remember if it's for the shoulder or for something else, but it has something. It's been something that's come up in the last couple of days, so it's possible that he slips a little bit, but I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah. I saw on Twitter, Neighbors also had a thing with like his shoulder.
Yeah, so they according to Breer, they flagged both LSU receivers for like minor shoulder things where it was less that like it's going to be a long-term thing and more just like they might have to have a procedure after this season. Breer said that like Brian Brzee had the same thing last year and he ended up being fine. Right. So it's like minor stuff that shouldn't affect them like too much. But then I think either independent of that or building off that a little bit, DJ did say today that Thomas has specifically gotten flagged by a few teams for some medical stuff.
And wasn't there something that Adonai Mitchell is like off of teams' boards now or something?
Yeah, so that's a character one.
Okay.
There was that Bob McGinn report that came out last week about him talking to all the scouts and stuff about like Mitchell is a moodier player. He has type 1 diabetes, and so like if his blood sugar isn't like properly like mediated and everything, like if he's having a bad blood sugar day, then he is like a nightmare to be around, and like, you know, a huge diva, and like that's where a lot of like the character stuff that has come out about him is sort of like circulating around. And like when he is having a good day, then like he's the best teammate ever and he's great and everyone loves him. And so it's really just like a mediation thing. And a lot of scouts seem to think that like you will have to have like give him a dedicated, I don't want to use the word handler, but like a dedicated staff member to kind of like keep him on track. Because it sounds like maybe he is not super proactive about like monitoring all of that himself, at least right now. So yeah, that has been something that's come up, is that he's off a few teams' boards. I wouldn't really expect him to be like a super huge Chargers target, but yeah.
So maybe, you know, maybe we should take an offensive tackle at 5 because all these receivers have flags. So JC Latham, no flags, great. The reviews are in. Kevin says ass. Hayden says I cry if this happened. Awful scenario. These rumors are making me miss Telesco. Zero difference makers. Yeah, if we do this, we're no better than Gruden and Mayock. Nothing is fine. Hayden would be on his knees crying. B for blew it. Yeah, that was awful. The draft was really bad. So you guys are going to be in a really good spot tomorrow if this actually happens. I'm really, really excited for you guys to deal with this one. But we'll be there. We'll certainly be there covering the draft. And at least if they pick at 5, at least it's over by 5, and then we can just spend the next 3 hours discussing this over and over again. Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on this one, this impromptu live stream, but had to do it, had some fun. I'm happy to talk to you guys before the draft begins. So enjoy the weekend. Katzen, I know you're going to be very busy. Insdorf, you're busy as always. Katzen, Insdorf, thank you very much as always. Alex says you've been great. Chat, you've been great. Take care. See you next time. And as always, full time.